Now, admittedly, in the middle of the 1217 Magna Carta, there are some sentences that do talk to us today. For example, no free man shall be taken or imprisoned or dispossessed of his free tenement or liberties or free customs, nor outlawed, nor exiled, nor in any way destroyed, nor will we condemn him, nor will we commit him to prison, except by the legal judgment of his peers, or by the laws of the land. Now that does mean something rather more to us today, I think. And so does the next clause in that Magna Carta. To no one will we sell, to no one will we deny or delay right or justice. Again, that's something very important to us today, as I'm going to talk about a little in a couple of minutes. But to get to these sort of huge points about liberty and freedom, you have to negotiate in the Magna Carta quite a lot of obsolete and redundant information. So there I was in Hereford Cathedral and I was looking at these two things, the Mappa Mundi and the Magna Carta, and I thought, well, it is odd that the Mappa Mundi, on the one hand, we don't even think about anymore, whereas the Magna Carta we hold in absolute veneration. So what I'm trying to get at with all this is that manifestly there is something extraordinary, isn't there, about the Magna Carta? Something rather powerful, something with a weight that's greater, much greater than the combination of its parts. Why is that? Well, the first thing to do, I think, is to examine what are the parts of the Magna Carta and where did they come from? And the simplest thing to say here is that the Magna Carta was a peace treaty. That's King John on the phone. Magna Carta was a peace treaty. Now, in the summer of 1215, King John, third Plantagenet King of England, had fallen out quite spectacularly with his barons, the most powerful men in the country. And the barons had risen up in rebellion against his rule, and they were calling themselves the Army of God and the Holy Church. Now that's the sort of grandiose title that only rebels ever seem to manage to really conjure up. But it's a wonderful title, the Army of God and the Holy Church. And they'd risen up against John with a large number of complaints. And their most immediate complaint, I think, was about John's failed attempts to wage a very costly foreign war against the King of France. Now, when John came to the throne, he didn't just rule England, he also ruled about a third of what we now call France. Normandy, Anjou, Maine, Touraine, Aquitaine, lordship over Brittany. That comprised almost the whole western seaboard of France and a massive amount of its territory. Well, that's what John inherited in 1199. But by 1203 to 4, he'd lost almost all of it. And for nearly a decade, he directed the policy of his government towards raising the money to finance a campaign to reconquer all of that land. And for the most part, that had gone badly. But it had gone particularly badly in July of 1214. On the 27th of July 1214, an alliance of John's friends, of people he'd paid to fight on his behalf, including his half-brother William Longspay, including his nephew Otto of Saxony, sometime Holy Roman Emperor. Well, they'd gone into battle against the King of France and they'd lost. They'd lost spectacularly. They'd lost a devastating defeat. They'd been routed. William Longspay, John's half-brother, had been taken prisoner. Many of his allies had fled from the field. And John, in a sense, had gambled everything on the success or failure of this battle, and he'd lost. And he'd been forced to return. He hadn't been at the battle. He'd been further south in La Rochelle. But he was forced to return to England, not only broke, because he'd spent all his money on this campaign, but with his reputation as a military leader, as a king, really the sense that God was on his side. All of that was on the floor. And his enemies in England were ranged against him, ready to strike.